Join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Approval of the agenda. I don't know if there's anything to approve or adjust. Special meeting. We have one item on there, and that's the 2024 budget discussion. And with that, we asked our departments to come up with, basically HR and auditor to come up with some spreadsheets and some recommendations and options for us to take a look at for the 2024 salary increases. And we have several of them that were printed out. Those are also included in our packet. There's some others that are in our packet that I don't know if we have printouts out, but
I got a question, just so I get wrapped around the axle. So when I'm doing computing numbers on here, except for a select few, when you do a 4%, some people are maxed out on their steps, right? Like if I look at Kevin Fields, if he's maxed out, if you were to do a 4% raise, it's a 4% COLA, no step. Question I have is when I'm looking at numbers, and I'm just using the 4% as a proposed thing here, and it says plus step. Question I have is, so if I'm an employee, the COLA would be 4%, which would, I'm just looking at this as a figure, and I automatically get a step increase because it's plus step, or I only get a step if my career field puts me at that step. You see what I'm saying? So if I'm working for Bo and I'm 2 years out from my step, because I think that's how your guys' step program works, and all of a sudden as a commission I say 4% plus a step, does that person automatically get a step, or do they still have to work towards that career field? Because when I look at these numbers to add up plus a step, every single person in here gets a step increase except for the people that are maxed out.
But that's why you have those department heads fill out the employee evaluations every year.
And that's what I'm asking. We don't get a step increase every year. You guys are on like a 2-year or 3-year rate. You get a step increase every year. Until you get maxed out on your steps.
And that's even another conversation I have, we've got somebody that's maxed out. Is there some other kind of, they'll get the cost of living, but is there something else we can do for somebody that's maxed out? Do they get another small percentage on top of that, or?
The thing of it is, if you look at the people that, and sorry I interrupted you, but the people that are maxed out, if you look at their wages, and the guys that are maxed out or gals that are maxed out or whoever it may be, when you get into that higher wage, that 4% is a lot more than the individual that's at the lower amount. So as a county, is there a stopping point where you have to, because what are we at, 28 steps? 25 steps. So you come in and you start at step 1, you're now working here 25 years to get to that max, right?
In most
cases. Are we setting our county up to have people go 40 years? Is there, I know we don't have no limitation on how long you can work until you're 150 if you want. But as a county, do we want to keep pushing that out where when you work here, you get a step? If you work here 80 years, you get 80 steps. Or also, once you get to that higher end, when you get a COLA, you're getting a bigger raise than the individual that's not maxed out. quite a bit bigger raise if you figure some of this out.
Right.
You know? So you start, and I see what you're saying, but you start figuring out percentages and all of a sudden if you add another percent to it, that would create this number down here to go very large, especially if all of a sudden you get a career path here, where everybody's at 30 years and they're all on their top end of the window. You could end up be looking at $400,000 in a year because everybody's maxed out at that higher number. You know what I'm saying? And that's a great thing to have. That's a great problem to have people working at an establishment for 25 plus years. You know, but to have a 25 step thing, I just think it's crazy that you do a COLA and a step every year. So you figure out, if we do 4%, let's say, and you take a step, I don't know what steps usually are.
It'd be anywhere from 3% to, anywhere from 0.5% to 3%.
Right.
Where you are on the step
So
scale.
some people, depending on how their step works, we could be easily giving an 8% raise. Right?
It depends on what COLA you pick, you know, you choose, yeah. Yeah, you could have somebody that, if you decide to do it at 6% cost of living, they just started, yeah, they're getting a 9% increase.
And not that that's bad, the way the economy is, but I'm just saying, if every year we were doing, since I've been in the commission, it's been 4% plus a step. So some of these people have been getting 8-9% every year. And I understand what you're saying, no, the guy that's maxed out has only gotten that 4%. I understand that, but on the other end of it, there's gotta be a max out, there has to be. I've never ever worked for a company where there's not a max, where all it is a COLA. But there has to be, otherwise you go broke. You know, especially.
That was my conversation with Candy yesterday, that, you know, yeah, I didn't put it in so many words, but yeah, there's gotta be a point where it ends.
And you've been here a long time, so I don't know if you're maxed out or not, but I know like when Kevin was sitting here the other night, he's maxed out, so. And I don't know what they did in his earlier on years, if they were only doing 1% or 2% and you weren't getting a step. And I could see where he could see some frustration maybe there.
But there was a time frame. How many years back? We didn't get anything, nothing,
So,
for 5-6 years.
and I had mentioned, I think, last year that with the survey, if you look at all of these numbers, we are pretty darn good as far as a county with staying within the range of keeping everybody competitive to the outside world.
And you said you did get a step for it.
There was no step scale when I started.
And that's why they brought the scale still.
It was either, what did I tell you? It was either like $100 across the board, full-time, 50 for part-time.
And I just wanted, and I'm not saying one way or the other, I just want to make sure that all the commissioners understand, because when you look at these numbers, if you just, and I was figuring like a 4%, and if you figure out 4%, I was like, I can't get this number to come out. Well, yeah, because I don't know what the steps are. I don't know what each individual gets a step. So just so that you're aware that that's why the number
But
looks
if
so different versus if you were to take every wage and just do a 4% across the board. That's why the number looks different. Because I was like, right, I just couldn't get wrapped around the axle. I'm like, either I'm not doing math correctly, and then I read up here, and I'm like, okay, so it must just be, if I was to put the motion in with the step, you get the step. So I'm tracking for my.
But then you also have to, like Brian and I had the discussion too, of those people that are capped. So you have employees either below them or different departments or wherever, where the person who's capped is only getting 4%. Somebody else is getting 7%. Pretty soon, because they're not maxed out. So pretty soon, how it works is they're gonna be either caught up to them or past them.
They can't,
Yes.
because their step will never allow that, their step will stop at 25.
Yeah, but if they're only at a halfway point,
So I'm tracking what you're saying,
Yeah.
Candy. So let's say I'm a $50,000 employee, and you got an $80,000 employee. If I give this $80,000 employee, this $80,000 employee is capped out, and they get a 4%. Their 4% is a lot more than this 50,000. The only reason I'm getting that step is because I haven't went through my career progression to get that step. Even if I go to step 25, this person up here is still getting that 4%, which is larger than the person down here getting the 4%. There's no way in this world that I can catch you. It can't happen.
different departments it does.
So then maybe we need it in the departments that if that's happening, then that's something we need to look at as a whole, because it shouldn't happen.
Well, and it's somebody in one department versus another. So you're putting more emphasis on one department at whether it be a higher grade, or, a higher salary to begin with kind of thing, and then another department.
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily within the same department. So
No. That's what
somebody,
I said, it could be, two different,
how exactly are the grade, is a grade structure calculated? Who came up with that?
Well, that would have been from Gallagher. So technically, if you were to look at our past wage scale or step scale, we've got 35 positions. We basically have 35 grades. I mean, not one of those positions has the same starting point. So what the grade created is, they created a proposal of 14 grades or 13 grades. So I think everybody may understand this, but you'll have multiple positions now in one of the grades. So probably very similar to how you guys out at camp have. I mean, we got everybody in grades, probably, or there's another name for it, but.
That's what it means.
So, maybe your deputy auditors in the same grade as the, deputy tax equalization person, those positions are all in the same grade. I don't know if that was your question, Jeff.
Yeah, because I was looking at, if I look at those positions and I look at his assistant, there's no way if Bo was maxed out that his assistant is ever going to catch Bo if we were to do a 4%. There's no way.
Unless she's,
And that's set up
she's
that way.
getting an 8% raise.
But once her steps are maxed out, so I can go look at her step. Let's say today I take her up to 25 step, and you're at 25 step. And I do a 4% here and 4% here, no way.
In that vacuum, correct, but if the assistant has the ability to continue along the steps and get a COLA, it basically makes, if I'm static, it'll take a long time, but she'll get exceedingly close the longer she works. And granted,
Okay.
I know that my department's kind of the anomaly on the list, but we also have 7 years of college each. So
Nope, and that's and I understand that 100%, Bo. If we're looking at department to department, that's hard to compare when it comes to the grade level. Because if you got someone educated and then someone that comes in that's no education and they're just working up into the field, totally understand that that's never gonna, you can't put apples to apples, it just is not gonna be. And that's why the education level is up in this world the way it is. And if that's the case where we're feeling that these people are catching up because we're doing a 4% and a step, well then maybe there's a possibility that we can't do the step up and the 4% or whatever. I'm suggesting 4% because I would make the motion to do a minimum of 4% COLA, but I just didn't understand the step portion. you know?
So the step is just based on time?
Right.
See, I always thought it was, so when I understood the step, I thought a career progression was, if I come into a job, and I'm looking at my view of how we do it, you cannot get a step but every 2 years. So you have to, if I'm working, if you're working for me and you just started, you come in, even if I'm giving you a 4% COLA, you still can't get that step until you work your time. And then once you work your time, you could get the step and the 4%. And I think that's maybe where, how Bo is saying that, and Candy, that these people below you can catch up to the person that's maxed out because they're getting a step plus. You know, because there's no gap in there, they get a step every year, as long as the heads say that their performance is there, correct? Yeah, correct me if I'm wrong. If they feel that you did a good, valuable performance, you're getting a step.
That's my question. The step is just based on time, no job performance?
There's been instances in the past where if we've had a bad, it's not based on performance, but we've had a scenario where maybe that step was held until that person went through, performance, improvement performance plan. And they may have gotten that adjustment a little bit later, that year. But yeah, we don't,
So question is, if we would say like a percentage and a step, but the head says this individual's not ready for a step, can that be held back?
that has happened in the past. I'll be honest with you, it's pretty rare. But it hasn't been since I started, but I'm under the understanding.
And granted, there would have to probably be documentation on why.
Right, yeah.
You being in HR, that's something that you would probably see.
Right.
I mean, you're ahead, if you have a deputy not performing, and you see this 4% plus a step, does that frustrate you? Because you want to be able to give them a performance, right?
Right.
I mean, the 4%, or just a percent, let's just say a percent, is the COLA. That's just what the economy's doing. The step should always be off of performance. That's my feeling.
I totally agree.
It should just be automatic, and that's why when we did this last year, I wasn't under the full understanding, but the more I research, the step should be up to the heads to make that step. If Candy has someone working for her, and those people are just not up to par, I don't think we should be sitting around this room saying, oh no, that individual gets a step no matter what. And Candy like, well, that individual's not performing to that. They're COLA, yeah. But
But the decision is always based on leaving it up to the department head
and that's what you just said.
to give that.
And then if there was a problem, so for instance, if there was, you've seen it in fields, if you had 3 people working for you and all of a sudden you're giving one person a step and a step, well, that's why we have HR, because then those people should be going to HR and say, hey, our steps aren't being fair. And that's when I should be brought to the commission.
But that's when the employee evaluation portion came in prior to January, right? Yes. Because if you have a bad evaluation,
What's that? 2 years almost today. There's some counties that you talk about the cost of living, and they don't even make it a percentage, they just say $3,000 across the board each person, or $2,000. Now, do they get that, do they get that in a one-time payment? I'm not sure. That's gonna be their COLA.
But
It's
that's
like a step.
that could really hurt you, where at least the 4%, the
Right.
guy at the top is still gonna get a little bit more than the guy at the bottom.
And that's where they're probably thinking fairness.
But in the end, they could end up costing them an even amount, even worse off. Where all of a sudden now you got a supervisor, even with the over employee, that could That'd be just like you being an owner and all of a sudden you're both equal, that's pay.
No, that's already.
But you know what I'm saying, that could be really bad.
Well, I mean, yeah, but I mean, that's just, but it's all performance based. I mean, if you're not performing, you don't get a raise. So I guess if that's.
That's how it was when I worked in the civilian world too, if you're not performing, you didn't get a raise.
So I guess my question is, supervisors, I mean, if you haven't had somebody held back in a step in 2 years,
It's happened.
in the last 2 years?
That's some of that.
Since I've started, I'm
Mhm.
not aware.
Okay. I'm gonna say that's not an accurate way, I mean, I wouldn't believe that, I guess. Because if your supervisor's doing, I mean, we're all human and there can't be everybody performing to the top of their ability in any organization. I don't care if you only got 35 employees or 2.
I 100% agree. Everywhere I've been at 4 different jobs, there's often your stellar people, and then you're not so stellar, and if they were to get the same raise that the person up here was getting, I think it would cause a lot of conflict.
I guess that was my question. I mean, if the supervisor, I mean, if it's, as long as we're not handing out steps that aren't earned, I mean, if it's, it kind of when we started this conversation, it sounded just like, oh, you got you another year and you get that step, and if that's not happening, then that's good. Because that's not how that should work.
And that's where we're trusting the department heads
So you have
to give us that performance value of the employees underneath you guys. You know, I just hope that we're just not throwing a bone out there just because we're trying to keep a heartbeat. That's not,
No,
that's terrible business. That's terrible business across the board. Like, I definitely want those individuals that you got working under you to be performing, you know, especially in your field of work. Otherwise, you're gonna be stacked up with paperwork like this.
So, I'm not trying to steer the policy here, but I just wanna give you another thing to think about, spin it on its head here. What happens when you get one department head who says, yep, everybody's performing, everybody gets a step, and another department head who says, no steps for anybody? Now you have this disparity between your county employees.
Then we need to be looking at the supervisor.
Sure, but
I mean, then it's on our plate. Whoever's got that portfolio needs to get their head together and, you know,
Because if that's happening, then that needs to be brought here to get them people spun back up to where they should be.
and I'm not disagreeing with you, with what you're saying about there needs to be a performance component, there needs to be a supervisor's discretion component, but I'm advising you, when you start treating different people differently, that opens up a whole can of worms in the labor employment world.
But I don't think we're treating differently if we come across and we say we're gonna give a percentage plus a step. But the step isn't a guarantee because it's still up to a performance. We're saying that we're allowing it as a commission. If we were to say, today we're gonna give a percentage plus a step, but all of a sudden Candy has somebody working for her and like, this individual's not performing, so we're not gonna allow that step. I don't think we're taking that away. We're still giving you the opportunity to do that. We're not saying you can't give that step, but we're not just saying it's just automatic. You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
I don't think anybody sitting in here is gonna come back and say, if you're not performing that, you shouldn't get the step. Correct me if I'm wrong, maybe there's someone here that thinks different.
And that employee that's under that performance improvement plan may get their step a little bit later, or they may
Right.
not get it,
They could have,
in January.
for instance, if I have an employee under me and all of a sudden we're on a performance plan and we come to agree and say, I'm gonna put you on this plan for 4 months. And after you show improvement, you get back to where you're, I'm gonna give you that step. I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
All I'm trying to say is, don't put yourself in the position where you say steps across the board, except for you, John.
Oh,
You're on a performance
I don't
plan.
think we're,
You know, cause that opens you up to liability. That's all I'm trying to say.
oh, right. And I don't think, that's not what I'm trying to do at all. I don't think Lee's thinking that.
No. But, I mean, you gotta trust your department heads to make that decision. I mean, that was a little clear in my head too. I mean, as long as they're being honest with their evaluations of that employee, not only, if they're not being honest, not doing their department any good, it's really not doing the employee any good, and it's certainly not doing the taxpayer any good. Then you have to trust your department heads. But if it's something, you know, like Bo says, all of a sudden we got one department head and nobody's getting a raise.
That's something we
Then it's up to
definitely,
whoever's got that portfolio saying, okay, it's just as inconceivable to me as everybody's doing a good job and nobody's doing a good job. That straight across the board, you gotta have one employee that sells at something unless your hiring process is so crappy that you're just taking heartbeats.
yeah, I don't think we have that problem here.
Right, you know what I
Because
mean? I mean,
since I've
it's,
been here, I don't think, we haven't had a lot of open positions. You correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, besides the sheriff,
That would be.
yours is a little different avenue because
we're
it's just a
fighting
tough
out west.
world right now. I believe it is.
And we're fighting the population out west.
Yeah,
And they can throw money at it.
that's hard to compete with that.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, that's a little bit different circumstances.
And you don't even have to go that far west,
Right.
to notice that difference. I mean, we're not talking Williston, we're
You're pretty quiet.
Well, I was just thinking that when I was in extension as office chair, we would do an evaluation of the employee based on the job description. And every year, if they exceeded that expectation of that description, that moved them into a different grade step. And when we did that, then I'd ask the employee to add another something to that description, so they gotta work a little bit more to get past to that next level.
and
And
I noticed that that's on the state level too, when they did sat in with Ramsey and helping with the Sarah, you know, when their supervisor from Fargo or the district or whatever came in, that's what they did. Was, okay, where are your shortcomings? You know, I thought they were pretty honest, you know, that I need to improve on this.
Yeah.
So let's take this 14 steps. So there's people that aren't at the 50 percentile.
very, 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 very few.
So, so if we say, let's just say we go with this 14, 1A at minimum, they get bumped.
What Gallagher proposed, yes.
Then that's already in this figures here.
Right,
And they're cool.
yes, well, in the COLA too, yeah, the grade spreadsheet had the adjustment and the COLA,
And the step.
and the step, yeah. The adjustment, the
Just
step.
make sure everybody
and the COLA.
understands, because I hate to say, like Bo said, and all of a sudden we give them the 50 percentile, but that person don't get the 4%. If we were suggesting, that's what I'm, if it's the percentage and the step, and all of a sudden now we're in a
Yeah, everybody,
bad spot.
I would say everybody, but yeah, there's the adjustment to get them to the step, and then we're given a step, so there's a jump and a step, and then the COLA's on top of it. Okay. So some, I mean, I just was randomly checking some, I mean, there's some employees that the adjustment alone could be 2 to 3%. And then they get a step on top of that, which could be, you know.
And the adjustment is just to get them back into competitive wages.
And get them in line with the new step scale.
That's the way I understood it, and that's the way that Megan showed us. would be really hard for me to say that you don't get those people back to where we should be, at least to the competitive world.
Yeah, I think that should be the first goal of this whole thing was
If you,
to.
there's a spreadsheet you guys,
Playing.
I'm sorry.
Nope, go ahead.
I mean, there's a spreadsheet that it doesn't match every position. I mean, there is, we're over market in a lot of our positions. I mean, we're very, very competitive. I mean, Gallagher really came out. You guys look good. I mean, I've seen
This, especially when you put our bonus package on top of it, it really looks good.
right. I think that's what kind of,
And I know we can say the younger generation may not be looking for that package. But I know the people that are working in this building, probably 90% of them came here because of that package.
when you're staying here because of it.
Exactly. Because they either worked on the outside, and I don't see a lot of really young people working at the courthouse. A lot of people have done their time, and it's like, you know what, I gotta have something with benefits, and something that's competitive, you know? That's what I see. I mean, I don't, if you go up and through all the departments, you don't see a lot of 18, 20-year-old kids working here because they're all still out there hoping that they can bust their butt and make some money on working the overtime and all that good stuff.
I think you can walk through, look at a lot of our employees. You have a scenario where they're county employee and their spouse is maybe self-employed. Or another scenario similar to it, and like that, family health insurance being fully paid is, that's a $2,500,
Big deal.
benefit right there, a month.
Absolutely.
But again, we talk about younger employees and they're still in their parents until they're 26, so.
And that's maybe why we steal a little bit here, and as soon as all of a sudden the real world kicks in, it's like, wow.
There,
I mean, let's be realistic. Now they're having kids. And, yeah. Anyway, we're getting something.
as I looked at these, and I think I mentioned it last time, and I mean, there's 4 proposals here from Gallagher, plus our standard scale we have right now is, if we're gonna go for a proposal, I like there's some fairness to the 1B with the 13 grades, the minimum, it just seems there's fairness across the board with all the employees. There's the step scale, if you were to put these employees into the step scale that Gallagher created, it really mirrors our step scale where everybody is, in that step process. There's some that aren't exact, but it's just so close. And you guys don't see that in front of you, but I just built a couple quick worksheets that kind of compared step scale to step scales. And
Well, if you look at, I think, Will, did you put this together?
I put that together.
Yeah.
That just puts
This-
the bottom
this-
numbers.
Yes, this gives you the bottom numbers, and it's a lot more understandable. And then you get all these little figures.
And
And
really,
we're not
that's
gonna
what-
lie, I like this because it doesn't have names on it, so that you don't start putting money to names, because that's not what we're here to do either.
Right, and that's why I sit here too, and I'm, suggesting that proposal, but it's like, I have skin in that game too, so I'm like, I don't want anybody to come back to me and say, of course you picked that one. But,
I do have a question, Brian. So I'm looking at the big sheets, if you will. 13(1)B minimum. I noticed there are some employees, I think it's the step number by their name on the far left side. But there are some employees who are or grade number rather,
yeah, it's agreed, yeah.
that are maxed out at like grade 4. Is that right?
Well, the grade isn't a step, it's just where they are, you know, they're positioned in the 13 grades with, you know, I can't figure out who you're looking at.
Highway in particular, bottom 3 on
Oh,
highway.
yes, so you've got, those guys are in their grade, their position is in the grade, not so much them, but their position is in that grade.
Right.
But they're maxed out, you know, they're employees that I'd have to look, you know, 25 plus years.
Sure.
So, I mean, they're maxed out no matter what with the proposal, with the new step scale.
Right, and I have the same issue in my department as well, looking at some of the different proposals.
Right. I mean, and again, that's why we create grades and step scales.
So
You don't continue to get,
the grades,
Right.
the education and all that.
Yeah.
Right?
you know, like, I mean, if you were to look at where everybody's placed in the grades, I mean, both is.
Yep.
grade
Then also, if you
13.
look at it, I mean, you look at the Tech 2, and then they got a Tech 3. Well, eventually, one day the Tech 3 is gonna retire. Well, that's where your experience should come in now, that you should be able to apply for that Tech 3. You didn't come in off the street going to the Tech 3, you came in off the street to go to the Tech 2, hoping to earn your way to that Tech 3. And that's where your performance comes in, and that's where your supervisor should be taking that into consideration. I'm sure you guys do that from sergeant to captain or whatever you, right?
Mhm.
I mean, that's, I understand all that. So these, when you're looking at like the 13s and the 14, that first number is just a step thing.
It's where they are in the grades, the grade.
So then that would
Where
throw,
their position is in the grade.
so then that would throw all the 25 steps out.
No.
It would still be-
Each grade has a 25 step scale.
Okay, right. When I was looking at the 14 1A minimum and looking at what I believe you and Candy put together here, if you look at the big numbers, there's not a lot of difference. Look at that. If you went down and you looked at 14 1A minimum, and I'm just looking at this 14% yearly, it's 169,813, and then if you look at what Candy and you put together, you look at the 4% per total plus the step, it's at 160. And we're at $9,000, you're looking at how many employees?
Look,
55, $9,000, and drop in the bucket, 55 employees. But I don't have a clue.
our, Candy, be correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe our yearly payroll budget's like 3 million.
2.69, I think.
It's not short of that.
Close.
So close to 3 million.
In which that's just doing business.
Yep.
And as people retire, you're gonna see that fluctuate also, because now you're gonna bring that high wage back down to a starting wage, so you might see it drop 40, 50,000 on. Eventually, people are gonna retire, it's gonna happen.
But maybe, you know,
You wanna get experienced people coming in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whatever.
so do we have a recommendation? You guys need some more time to discuss. We'd like to give our departments a direction on which way to go with their budget process. And remember, this is a starting point. You know, and so you wanna be able to go
And that's basically.
backwards if you possibly can. If all of a sudden you're looking at the end of July, first part of August, and budget's way too high. Unfortunately, one of the places that we can make adjustments to is equipment, personnel, wages. So,
And from Lee's point too, I just, maybe, I don't know, we're probably too late in the budget process to make this change, but maybe this is a project for next year, but maybe we need to go to more of a performance-based increase. You know, I come from the private sector, I mean, we were told as supervisors, this is your budget, you can, or this is what you're allowed, is basically 0% to 3% this year for an increase for your employee, based on their performance. There was some years where things were good, it was like 0% to 5%, you know, but, I mean, that's, I mean, we kind of got a performance-based, because there's, the supervisor has that option of, you know, withholding, you know, that increase until a later date, but
But I guess I was just concerned that it was just years of service, and, I mean, as long as, we have to trust our supervisors.
Exactly.
And if they're doing the job they're supposed to be doing, then there is no issue. I mean, the performance thing is already in it. I mean, unless you really start narrowing down the box, you know, you need to check every one of these boxes to get your step. Well, if you're short one or two, then that's something you deal with, but I just didn't wanna, as I first understood it, it was just, you got it, and that's, as long as we're not doing that, then I'm good with how things are.
right. In our employee handbook, there's some verbiage to that also.
When they first came up with that system, when I was told extension, that was kind of the thought process, is you just automatically moved up a grade if you were here a year. And then that's where the evaluation stuff started playing that bigger role.
Yep.
Mr. Chairman, I would move that we consider as a starting point for our budget process to do the 14-1A minimum at 4%.
okay. We have a motion, do we have a second? 14-1A minimum, 4%.
What did you say?
14.
14-1A, 4%.
We have a second, anybody?
I'll second it.
Okay. Discussion. Any further discussion?
I do think that'd be a good starting point for our departments to come to us with their budgets.
I think that'd be,
What I like more is comparable and with Andy putting that together for us, because I think we were all struggling a little bit, but with you putting together what we did to where we were, I think it's a comparable.
I
So
agree.
this is just a proposal to the feds, if we come back and we're way over, we can adjust, correct?
Right. Yeah, but this will give departments a starting point, and give, Brian and Candy, when people are submitting their budgets or having questions about their budgets, they can give them a direction on which way to go. So, further discussion on the motion that we have before us. So it's 14-1A, based on the salary survey, with a 4%.
You're doing the minimum, right?
14-1A minimum. So, with 4%, correct? Yep. Any further discussion? If not, call for the question and take a roll call, please.
Wilhelmie,
Aye.
Volk,
Aye.
Otis,
Aye.
Gessner,
Aye.
Brett.
Aye, motion passes. With that, next meeting is a week from Thursday, July 6th. Reminder to everybody that the county offices will be closed the 3rd and the 4th. Hope everybody has a wonderful Independence Day weekend.
I would like to say thanks to Brian and Candy for putting a lot of this stuff together for us.
Thank you. With that, we call the meeting adjourned.
Here's what.